It's the Opix Podcast, baby. Glad you tuned in. Got your host, thank me later, and you're stupid to win. Might be coming up. Session as soon as you begin. Start out king of the street, then lock it iconic in. Welcome to Upland. Grab your Opix, man. On your way, and the door hit you with $4,000. Get to buying and gripping, then to selling and flipping. Over to moving and shucking. I'm Scrooge McDuckin in Opix.
Welcome, fellow Uplanders, to another episode of the Opix Podcast. I am your host, Too Stupid to Win. This is not a full-blown episode, but we're interviewing Rob Cove from Upland. If you don't know, he is the king of Upland trades. He has hit over 10,000 trades in the Upland metaverse since he started playing a little over a year ago. He is not in my time zone, so it makes it pretty difficult for him to join the live recording. We've been working on this for a little over a month. Thank Me Later was unavailable today, so this is just a special episode. On YouTube, we will have the interview channels where we'll break out all the players that we've interviewed over time, so you can just watch those videos. So this will be released under that aspect, and it will be a special episode on the podcast, and this would be episode 125. And before I get any further, I'll read the show disclaimer. The views, information, and opinions expressed on the Opix Podcast are solely those of myself, Thank Me Later, B-Dag, and T. Davis, and any guest of the podcast, and do not necessarily reflect those of Upland Me, Inc. We are not employed by or provided insider information from the Upland Me, Inc. team, nor are we financial advisors or investment advisors. All discussions about properties, types of properties, or any other NFTs in Upland to buy or sell or trade is not financial advice. Please do your own research first, and we do not guarantee any particular outcome from participating in Upland. There is a potential loss from participating in the purchase, sales, or investing in Upland and the metaverse. And as Thank Me Later always says, it's just a game, and he is a gamer that puts in thousands of dollars every year in games and doesn't expect any return. So I cleared up the disclaimer for anybody else, and yes, I've lengthened it. It was pointed out by some listeners that I needed to include some of these other aspects, so I did. But without any further ado, we'll get Rob up on the show. How are we doing this evening, Rob?
I'm good. I'm very good. How are you?
Doing excellent. So is it Rob Cove, like without
Yeah,
the E?
yeah, it's Rob Cove. So basically, Cove stands for Coventry, which is where I was originally from in England, and I'm a Coventry City fan, like football supporter. So that's where it came from.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense there. I like learning the history behind why they picked their usernames. Do appreciate you taking the time and joining us on the podcast. So you hit 10,000 trades. When did you hit that?
It was probably maybe 3-4 weeks ago, maybe. It does sound like an insane number, doesn't it? But I'm kind of.
That is an insane number. If you look here, you're number one at 10,655 trades, and I just pulled that down. This is being recorded on March 6, 2022. So I just pulled this down a couple of minutes before we started recording. The person in second place is Invenom, and the only reason he's there is because he cashed out of Upland and traded all his properties to Dizzy. So that means number 3 is Drickus, and he's at 3,859. So you are almost 3x higher than the next closest player that is actively playing in Upland. That's just an insane number.
It is, to be honest, but it's when you look at that number, it's not. It doesn't necessarily translate to huge profit. I mean, I've done well, but some people have made more than me, obviously. How I look at it is I kind of want to be known as somebody who offers really good value. So my markups are kind of not that high. I had a period of time where I was kind of selling at around 8% markup on mint, which sounds ridiculous, but in real life, I kind of I have a small holding or a homestead, is what some of you guys in the US would say. And how I look at Upland is it's a bit like when you want to farm an area of land, you sow your seeds, but you then harvest way down the line. So my strategy is kind of sow the seeds by buying properties and then selling them on and flipping to the point where each amount you make off each property is then reinvested into another property, so it carries on growing, and effectively the amount of money you make in each month in dividends increases very gradually, but in the space of kind of like a year, it's grown significant. I remember in the first few months, I was kind of making the equivalent of maybe $1 a day or something. And I thought to myself, why are you doing this? But I kind of have stuck to a vision in the sense that I'll be rewarded later down the line. And over the past few months, it's increased quite a lot. And and how I see it is it's like compound interest. Compound interest is extremely powerful, and that's essentially what my strategy is essentially compounding and offering really good deals to people to keep people interested and play my part in keeping the market liquid.
Nice. How did you find Upland?
I was referred to it by a guy who I used to know on a totally different platform. It was like a football stock exchange, which has since gone bust. And that's a totally different story in itself. But I was looking for something to kind of fill that void, and a friend of mine sent it to me, and I'm interested in kind of I enjoy maths and looking at data, so I'm a little bit geeky in that sense, and yeah, it kind of hooked me pretty much straight away.
Oh, nice. So a football stock exchange. I definitely got to hear that story at a later date. That sounds interesting in in itself. Um, so you got rolling in Upland. What was the thing that really was it an instant hook for you, or did you play it and you came back to it, or walk us through your first little experience with Upland?
Yeah, so I kind of had a look on, I think it was the Telegram group, which I joined first of all, and had a little read on that, and then looked on YouTube at a few videos, and decided to, I think I deposited like $50 or something like that, just enough just to get a feel for the game. I see a lot of people on Discord and on Telegram sometimes complain that it's really hard to get going. But one thing I would say is that maybe chuck in $50 if you can afford it, because it does make the game better in my view, and it gets you going a little bit quicker. So I think I started out in Brooklyn, I think it was. So I bought a load of FSAs in Brooklyn, and basically sold 2 a week. And I can't remember how many I had. I had quite a few because the mint prices were, I think they were like 800 UPX or something like that at the time. So it took me like about 6-7 months to sell them all, but I did make a nice profit on it. And then I ended up buying a few non-FSAs, and then a lot of my focus was on minting properties when new cities were released. So Chicago, I remember Chicago, I minted hundreds and hundreds of properties, but I didn't necessarily have a massive kind of like cash flow. So I was kind of sometimes playing with maybe 100 or 200,000 UPX. So I was buying them, flipping them, and then rinse and repeat over and over and over again. And it sounds ridiculous, but because I couldn't commit my own funds to the game at that point. Occasionally I do now, but at the time I didn't want to commit any money into the game because I was testing it out to see, if I felt like the game would succeed and what kind of future it had. So every single day I was probably putting in like 2 or 3 hours every morning, just minting properties over and over and over again. And it was I mean, I think it was bordering on insanity, to be honest. I don't think many people could actually do what I did. The sheer number of kind of properties I was minting, but I just saw it as an opportunity where, you know, you have a goal. So ultimately, my goal is to make $1 million on Upland, which sounds ridiculous, but each day I kind of record what my portfolio balance is, and then I just try really hard to try and increase it each day and then compound it. And if you look at kind of cryptocurrencies and that kind of thing, yes, you can make a lot of money off it, but you can lose a lot of money as well. And you're not necessarily in control of that investment. You have to rely on kind of like so many different things to fall in place. Whereas I think with Upland, players have got more control. Obviously, you've got more, you know, market forces at play, but generally, I think you're kind of more in charge of your destiny than investing in other cryptos. That's kind of my opinion on it. But yeah, I think as somebody who wants to play the game and doesn't have too much money, then I think it's about time and kind of studying and talking to different people. Obviously, you know, there's your podcast, and there's so many different groups on Discord, which people can join as well, which is one way to kind of learn. I think yes, if you have funds, then by all means invest if you think it's going somewhere. But if you don't have the funds, then it doesn't mean that you're priced out of the game. It makes it a bit harder, but that's the challenge. And what I did after probably 2-3 weeks, I decided to kind of like record how much I was making each day. And it went on for quite a few months where I wasn't making too much because I'd only put in $50. But each day I was making a little bit more. So, you know, maybe after a few weeks I was making $1 a day. Then after maybe another few weeks I was making $1.25 a day. And it's just grown gradually, and to the point that each day it gets a little bit more and more and more. But with the compounding of interest, it's frightening what you could potentially make. So I went on to like a compound interest calculator, and I put, if you made 1% a day, which doesn't sound a lot, and it is difficult, but if you were to put in, I think it was like I can't remember the amount, but the amount in interest you'd make over a period of 12 months is absolutely insane. So yeah, I think you can make more money on Upland at present than invested in certain stocks and shares, and you're kind of a little bit more in control of it. But at the same time, Upland is, I would say, in startup mode really, and there are risks involved. And I was involved with the football stock exchange game a few years ago. Thankfully, I managed to get out just in time, but there were some people who were left with thousands of pounds of losses through the company going bust. So never invest more than what you can afford to lose, and don't get into a position where you think nothing can ever go wrong, because things can go wrong, and sometimes people have too much faith in a product. So just have a balanced head when thinking about investing your hard-earned money into any kind of product, which kind of includes Upland as well. That's just my 2 cents on things with that.
Yeah, that's pretty sound advice. And we made the analogy when we did the FSA video for the Fair Start Act that, hey, it's like a video game. If you're a gamer and you used to buy video games, go ahead, put the $50 in, you know, and get going. It gives you a head start, but it doesn't overly commit you. So that's pretty awesome. You kind of had the same mentality. You just didn't tie it to video games, but it was something you could afford that you thought was worth your time and that you could part with to do it. So very, very wise there. Can you explain your your custom block explorer. I never looked at it too closely till I was trying to make graphics here for bringing you on. And I'm like, it's a baby in a diaper with spiders.
Sorry,
this
that
isn't
one.
your costume. This is the Halloween. I'm sorry.
Not yet. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I've got one being made at the minute. And I'll give people a clue. It's kind of well, I'll just say what it is. It's going to be like an Irish leprechaun. So I wanted to go for a leprechaun because they're a little bit mischievous and good fun, and maybe the look of the Irish as well could play a part in me kind of reaching my goal. So yeah, and I think also
that would be a cool. That would be a cool block explorer. I have not seen a leprechaun running around Upland yet.
So yeah, so I've got like goal. You know, I kind of set myself little goals to achieve, like make this much by this amount of time, and sometimes I reach them, sometimes I don't. But if you don't have goals set in place, it's really easy just to kind of become a little bit lazy. I think sometimes, yeah, the passive game, I still can't work out if buying a property and leaving it for 12 months and then selling it makes more money than flipping that one property like 80, 90 times or whatever. It's really difficult to say, but I personally prefer that way because it feels like I'm more invested in the game, and it's more fun. So I think there's plenty of different ways to skin a cat in Upland. So I don't think there's one best strategy at all. I think there's numerous things you can do, and also kind of adapt as well. I think sometimes when you do one thing, it can work for a good while and then it stops working. So I think you have to kind of adapt your game a little bit. I remember with
absolutely.
I think it was Kansas and Chicago. I think Kansas at one point you were able to kind of mint under the market floor. So I can't remember what it was, the floor, but it was almost like you could kind of mint and then sell straight away within kind of a few minutes, and you were kind of making. It was about the equivalent of like $1, something like 1,000 UPX, which doesn't sound a lot, but when you're doing kind of 100, I mean, I was averaging probably 150 trades a day, so that's like 150 roughly dollars worth, which is pretty insane. I mean, it was time consuming, but I thought to myself, once I've made that dollar can then go into $2, $3, $5, $10. And at the start, I was looking at the community and I was thinking, wow, some of these guys have got so much money or worth in the game. I'm never going to be in that position, and I'm still not compared to a lot of players, but I'm getting there bit by bit. And it's like if I put in, I remember, I think maybe at the start it was like $50 worth. So I think maybe 50 properties at like 1,000 UPX each. But now I'm in a position where I've been able to buy some houses on properties and stuff, and that's pretty cool. I remember getting my first house, which I think I then sold it for like, around 50,000 UPX or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is cool. This is like 20, I think I made something like $20 worth or something like that. And now I've managed to get an apartment. So I never thought I'd be buying apartments, large apartments, which are like huge. So it's interesting because there's always something different you can explore, and you can make mistakes along the way. I mean, I've made some mistakes, and I've got a few properties which I've probably paid a little bit too much for. And I'm not afraid to sell them cheap, sell them off if I think that the money could be working for me elsewhere. And my biggest thing in life is that I believe I want money to work for me. So every pound which I earn, I want it to then be working away whilst I'm sleeping, because life is too short to be kind of working away and not having experiences. So I kind of moved from the city to the countryside up in northeast Scotland, and I'm very kind of time rich now, and maybe not as cash rich, but hopefully Upland can change that a little bit.
Yeah,
So I
and I
think
like that
make you
theory
really work
of
for you whilst you're sleeping. So whilst you're asleep, I almost treat money now as being little employees. So every dollar, pound, or whatever currency you're using, they're basically working for you. So like now that I'm talking to you, I'm earning a little bit in the dividends and stuff like that whilst I'm even talking to you. Or if I'm like today, I went to the beach today, and you're earning whilst you're having fun. So I think you make your own luck in life. I think the harder you work with stuff, or the smarter you work with stuff, the more chance that luck will appear. And people, hopefully, in a few years' time, I'll reach my goal and say to people, I've made this amount of money, and they'll be like, "Oh, Rob, you're so lucky," but it's not luck. You kind of make your own luck.
yeah, they didn't see the hours you say 2 to 3 hours a day just minting properties for your inventory and listing. And you're pretty active on Twitter too with your deals, and you're very transparent with it. Like, hey, I'm only going to make 8% profit on this one. And I like how you do your research too, that hey, it has this building on it, so Spark would cost you this much, and I'm
Yeah,
selling it for this much. The mint, you broke it down that hey, I know I'm asking this much over mint, but the Spark price will cost this, so mint plus the price that I'm asking, this is overall, so you're still getting a deal, and I'm still making a profit.
people. What I would say is that on kind of like Discord and on Telegram, you have so many people marketing the properties, but it makes me laugh because I see the prices of some of these properties and I think, wow, this is absolute rubbish. Like, what are you doing selling at those prices? And it's almost like, I don't know. To me, I know it's a game and everything, but sometimes when I see some of the prices of properties people are asking for, I'm like, wow, you're kind of ripping people off, and blatant lies sometimes. And it's like someone will say, "Oh, this is the cheapest property in this area," and I'll go on to kind of UPX Land and the Spark Exchange websites, which are really good tools for people to kind of look at the prices, and it's way off. And I know things happen in real time and stuff, and prices can change a little bit, but some of it's ridiculous. So, when I go on to price my properties up, I'll look at the prices in an area, and look at the markups, because sometimes the markups can be slightly higher at the bottom end. So when you go on, say for example, I don't know, LA, or I don't know, any city, you look at, say, the bottom price, say 8,000 in LA, maybe, and somebody's selling a property for 8,000, but the mint price was like 2,000. Just as an example, people don't necessarily look at markup prices; they just look at price. And you think to yourself, you're paying 8,000 UPX for a property which was minted at, say, 2,000 UPX, but then if you do your homework, you could then buy a property for 8,000, but the mint price was 7,000. And people, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand that, and they're paying over the odds for properties. It's like at the minute I'm focusing quite a bit of time on buying properties with houses. So I think the bottom of the market at the minute in UPX is around 35,000 UPX. So I'm looking at properties around that kind of 30 to 50,000 UPX and looking at the markups on them. And I spotted, I don't know if it's the one on the screen, or there's a couple more which I bought recently, and I saw a couple for 10,000 UPX were the mint prices, and there were people selling at the same price, but the mint price was 2,000 UPX. Or they might be selling a little bit cheaper, and it's work. And what I would say is that when you look into value a property to buy, always look at the markup price, to see how much over the mint price you're paying for that property. Don't just look at the cheapest price on the market, because a lot of the time you can get better deals elsewhere. So look at the size of the property. So say if it's like a 60 and then you spot one, say like 100, if they're the same price, buy the 100. Even if it costs you maybe a few hundred UPX more, you're getting more bang for your buck. And that's what I would say. Just looking at Detroit, I've just gone in and minted a load of properties right at the bottom of the market, around $4 to $5 now. The FSAs are cheaper, but there's always people who want to buy in the secondary market, and I'm offering 8% on these ones. So I'm only making like 100, 200 UPX on them, but it's just something for me to do. And I say that each, UPX I make, it's more than what I had this morning. And, 10 of those or 20 of those will make me a couple of thousand. Eventually it means I can buy another one. And then the dividends go up a little bit. And what I would say is that, yes, you can kind of hold on to a property. So you could mint a property at, say, 2,000 UPX, and then a year from now, it could be worth 20,000. You could sell it for 20,000. If you were to look at, say, like the mint price of 2,000 versus 20,000, and the rent you're getting more rent on the 20,000. So I think there's a point in time where property is worth selling to then upgrade to another property, but it's just working out, the 5% selling fees. And that's one thing which I find difficult, is knowing the best time to sell a property. And I think that probably comes with experience, and sometimes a little bit of luck, because things can happen with the market, and Upland decides to release a new city, and that can have a knock-on effect on different places.
So not to cut you off there, but
sure.
So Upland releasing another city, do you like it when they do that and the floor comes down? Because in my opinion, they're doing pretty well with controlling the economy and controlling the secondary market with the city releases. For somebody that, spends hours a day minting lower properties and flipping them, what is your take on that?
I would say it's interesting because a couple of days before a city release, sometimes the market quietens down a little bit, but it gives people opportunity as well. I kind of tend to look at the market and just see if stuff have kind of gone down. And there's a lot of players who will sell properties ridiculously cheap just so they've got some UPX to go buy it in new cities. And obviously, with the new cities launching, there has been problems in the past where people have had a ton of UPX, and then obviously the website's crashed, which isn't a good thing. And then they're kind of a bit annoyed that they've sold properties too cheap to try and get into the action. So personally, I kind of have some UPX available for the new cities, but also have some UPX available to kind of try and get some decent deals before cities are opened. So a few of the so before LA launched, the market with houses was going up really, really nicely. So I think it was, some of them had gone up to like 70 odd thousand UPX, and I was thinking, oh, this is great. So I invested in some, sold some, and I've still got a few. And there's a couple of decisions where I thought, I don't know, it'll probably take a bit longer to sell. But I would say new cities, I think it's a good thing because you can kind of pick up some bargains. I remember somebody selling, I think it was like a ranch house or something for like 12,000 UPX, which is absolutely ridiculous. And just to go and spend in a new city. So I think sometimes new cities are great, but maybe don't put all your eggs in one basket with new cities. Maybe spread it around a bit, and buy some bargains because people are looking to offload stuff.
And working with somebody like you in a new city is great, because that means you don't have to travel. If you don't want to spend the time to travel, you don't want to spend the time minting, you know that you're in the new city, you're minting some of the lower style properties, but you're only putting it up for, I've seen you put stuff as low as 6%, but you're somewhere between 6 and 10%. You usually keep it under 10%. So working with you is usually great on a new city if you don't want to travel. Now, one of the questions I did have on here, a couple of people, you know, they said that did you switch your strategy? Because some people are like, oh, that guy always makes low ball offers to me. So did you switch your strategy up? Was there a time you were making low ball offers, or are you still
No,
doing it? Or are people considering your 6 or 7% low ball offers?
no. Well, okay. So how I kind of played it to start with, I didn't do treasure hunts. I didn't go to new cities for launches and stuff. Particularly, I used to kind of wait until the software was sorted out and it was back up and that kind of thing. So I would kind of, I'd say the first kind of 3-4 months, maybe up to 6 months, was spent just minting properties, primarily in Chicago. Was my main place where I did that. And now I I I, I kind of did a lot of minting in Los Angeles and I've done a bit in Detroit. Um, in terms of kind of like property lowballing, like occasionally, occasionally before a city launch, I might lowball a little bit just to get the reaction of someone, but it depends on the property. So, say for example, like I wouldn't go under the min floor in a city for like a non-collection property. So say for example you've got something around say like 8,000, I wouldn't go in at like 7.6 or something like that. I wouldn't do that because it's just not worth it. And 9 times out of 10, somebody isn't going to accept it. So it's a waste of your time in doing that. But if you see something on the market which hasn't shifted for say 150,000 UPX, then yeah, I might go in at 90, 100 just to kind of get someone's reaction. But in the main, not really. It's my main strategy is kind of like the minting of new properties and flipping them for probably 8, up to 10%. And then if I can't do that, if the market's quieting down, because sometimes what happens is you can mint a city and then the mint prices are too high in comparison with the floor price. So if you're kind of minting it, say, as an example, if say the floor price was say 10,000 UPX, once you kind of get to around 9,000 UPX mint floor, it can get harder and also to flip quickly. And also what happens is at certain price points in the game, it gets harder to kind of sell. So I find that a lot of players price in even numbers. So if say for example the floor is 10,000 UPX, you might have say 100, 200 players all pricing that property at 10,000 UPX, and then it will go to say like 10,100, 10,200. So I think when you're minting and you're trying to get rid of stuff, you've got to be careful with how many properties are ahead in the sales queue. But you do get you kind of get a fair bit of competition sometimes. So I've noticed in the past people have tried to label me and go under kind of my prices, which I think are ridiculously cheap. But sometimes you kind of have to kind of just take a step away and say, you know what, their properties will sell, and it can get quite competitive. Like, and it's it's interesting, but it's all good fun. It's all good fun.
Oh yeah, and you know, if it was any other investment, and you're telling somebody you're getting an 8 to a 10% return religiously, a lot of people would be all over that, you know, because they say the U.S. New York Stock Exchange on average, you know, it depends on who you talk to, it's between 7 and 12%. But you know, you're flipping properties daily for 8%, 7%. So I mean, in the long run, you got a great strategy. You stick to it, and I think you're gonna make your $1 million here in Upland. Is that $1 million that you've pulled off to the side, or just generated $1 million overall?
That's my goal. That's my goal is to make that. So I haven't. There's no way I'm nowhere near that level at the minute. It's going to take me a couple of years to do it at least. But it's like that's part of the journey, isn't it? It's like getting to that goal. So I think once you reach that goal, yes, it's brilliant, and yeah, that could potentially be life changing. But it's kind of the satisfaction in getting there. So all the kind of hard work I'm doing now and all the hours I'm putting in now, I'm not getting paid for right this minute, and hopefully down the line.
Future, you're working now for the future, and then when you have the success, they're like, man, he got lucky, but they're not seeing what you've done there. But I really do appreciate you taking time this evening to spend with us. That's about all the time that I have available at the moment. But you can reach him on Twitter. I have his Twitter out there. You can find him in the Discord. And if you're looking for some good deals, definitely hit Rob up. He is one of the hardest working uplanders I know, especially in the secondary market. And hopefully that does clear the air for some of the people with their high hopes or false accusations of lowballing. Because this guy is, if you're a secondary market buyer, this is the guy you want to work with and pick up these properties. And he always has an inventory on hand, and he's always on Twitter telling you about his.
I think if, with regards to like lowballing, I think everyone's lowballed to a certain extent. But if you look at kind of like my trading history, if you look at kind of the mint price and then look at on the blockchain, you'll see that I'd say 95% of all my properties were minted by myself. And then I'll bang on kind of 8-10% markup on top. Occasionally, with city launches and stuff like that, then it's kind of playing the game a little bit. I've had people lowball me, and I kind of just say yes or no. It depends. People want liquidity at the launch of new cities, so it's kind of it's a strategy. But it's like I wouldn't spend like my whole day kind of doing hundreds of offers kind of thing, because it's just a waste of time, because it kind of means the UPX is trapped a little bit because it's not working, because you're waiting for people to respond to you and that kind of thing. So I'd much rather have that money working for me. But yeah, I think everyone's lowballed a little bit from time to time.
And it's people's perspective too. Some people think that if they're offered under 20% mint, that it's a low ball. So it's perspective, and I was throwing that out there for some of the listeners that have made that comment there. It wasn't directed at you. Or
no, I get it. Yeah. I get it. It's fun, Uplands. It's brilliant. It's funny, and it's kind of like a soap opera going on in real time, and that's what kind of I enjoy about it. Negotiating with people. I think I had someone contacted me the other day, and I think I had like an apartment for sale and stuff, and it was a decent one. I think it was like around 300,000 UPX, so a decent one. And someone offered me, I think it was like 80,000 UPX. So I just sent a message back saying, you can't even rent the Spark to build it for that price. So I think sometimes people are a little bit kind of, they try it on, but it's fun. It just makes me laugh.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. Hang out backstage once I end the podcast, chat with you for a couple more minutes. But I do appreciate your time, and you guys definitely find them on Twitter if you're looking for some low markups on the secondary property. And we look to have you on the podcast here in the near future with an update as you get closer to your goals.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. And if anyone wants to reach out, then drop me a message. I'm more than happy to kind of share some of the strategies which I've used and some of the mistakes along the way, because I've made mistakes, and I think with social media people tend to kind of just brag about every good bit, but there are downfalls and stuff which I've done wrong and that kind of thing. But it's about kind of learning from it, and
learning from it, helping everybody else out. So that's awesome. Everybody, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at UpX Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribing to the video and hit that notification bell so you know when we go live for our weekly podcast, or notified when we do post special interviews like this. Until you hear from myself and thank me later this week, everybody be safe and have fun.
It's the Opix Podcast, baby. Glad you tuned in. Got your host, thank me later, and you're stupid to win. Might be coming up, session as soon as you begin. Start out king of the street, then lock in iconic in. Welcome to Upland. Grab your Opix, man. On your way in the door, hit you with $4,000. Get to buying and gripping, then to selling and flipping. Over to moving and shucking. I'm Scrooge McDuckin in Opix.